Welcome into the Spiritual Evolution Podcast. My name is Brian.Doyle, and today I'm going to be going into many different topics regarding the present time that we're in and just sort of riffing on what is going on in the world and the urgency that I have personally to try to wake people up to anthroposophy, spiritual science, and to help people understand what we need to do to wake up to the spirit in our everyday lives. And as we live in an increasingly materialistic society, which is increasing in a material sense exponentially. So it's not just a graph that is linear going up in materialism, it is exponential. And so it begins to go vertical and begins to overtake our lives. And so I'm seeing this picture, and I think that one of the problems of society today is that there are so many problems that we can just decide to not pay attention. We may also decide to not pay attention to any of them, or we might just focus on certain ones, and that's okay as well. But the task of our time at the highest level is to perceive the world outside us spiritually and look beyond just the material aspect, beyond what we perceive with the senses. We are to develop our inner life of soul so that we can become clairvoyant. And we can use this higher development for the betterment of the world. And we are tasked in our time to develop our thinking. And it's important to address that our thinking is our highest faculty, according to Rudolf Steiner. Not our feeling, not our willing, but our thinking. And that is a threefold nature of the human being. We have many different aspects of us that are threefold nature. And that is one of those aspects. And as we develop this thinking, as we develop our ego, we are to give our development of our ego personally, to develop our ego individually, not as a collective, not as a collective consciousness, not as a universal intelligence, but as an individual ego consciousness that has an individual relationship with Christ, that is developing intelligence out of the stream of the Archangel Michael in a spiritual aspect and understanding. And to, out of full freedom, to give that love and intelligence and understanding away to the world, to not hold it within and keep it to ourselves and only work on ourselves, but to work on ourselves to a high enough level that we can then give it away out of full freedom and love. And ultimately, that is the mission of the earth. And we have to suffer. That is what love is. That is what Christ taught us. And that is what Rudolf Steiner taught us throughout the fifth gospel, is that Christ suffered the experience of a human life. He understands us intimately because he experienced suffering. A God experienced suffering on the earth as a human being. and experience death. And the fact that a God in Christ himself experienced death freed us from death. So because gods were able, the gods in the hierarchies were then able to see through Christ what it was like to die. They didn't know what death was like. And because of this, we have eternal life. And because they were able to experience death, the Ahrimanic beings, the beings of materialism and science and intellect, are held back from completely taking over the human being and the human future, right? The future is determined by Christ and by the hierarchies who have determined what that future looks like for us. But we also have a choice, and we have the task to do the work of the hierarchies and of the gods and of Christ and of Michael down here on earth. We have the task. We can't just be idle. We have to have the urgency. We can't just avoid the news. We can't avoid what's happening in the world, right? We can't avoid all of these things. The destruction of Gaza and the Palestinians and the genocide that's happening there. The Iran war now that we could be dragged into as America. The environmental crisis that we're going through, and now we're facing deregulation on the highest level. The military-industrial complex being funded more than ever before through the latest bill that might go through Congress, which means more and more capabilities of this shadow CIA military-industrial complex government being able to then use that high technology that we have no idea even how high technology it is to manipulate us, to control our minds, to get into our body and control us remotely. These are the types of technologies that they are creating for the future. It's part of the control grid, if you will, that they are setting up with all of our data that they have through our phones and through the internet and through all of the things that we put online and search online and et cetera. The algorithm gets to know who we are, gets to know our impulses, our lower impulses, not our true selves. They can't touch the true self, but they know our impulses and our lower nature, our Ahrimanic nature, our materialistic nature. They begin to know, the algorithm begins to get to know and connect with your Ahrimanic nature. And it then mirrors it back to you, sort of like an algorithmic double, right? So these are the types of technologies that this shadow government, CIA government, if you will, has. And this is the type of thing that we are facing. We are in the darkest times in the history of humanity. There is no question of that. There is no question. And the only question is, are you avoiding that? And do you know about all these things? Because if you don't, it's living in the subconscious. And as anthroposophists, we need to seek for the truth, the highest truth, and understanding of these things. We can't just sit idly by and not understand that there's chemtrails being sprayed on us every single day that are actually blocking the sun, which is healing our physical and etheric bodies through the presence of the Elohim and Michael. They don't want that, right? These are dark brotherhoods. Steiner spoke of these. Steiner was like the original conspiracy theorist, okay? So if anyone thinks Because that's the issue, is that things have gotten so dark that now a lot of people just, you can't even talk about these things because people just think it's a conspiracy. They think everything is just fake. But if you understand the darkness that Steiner saw for the future, as well as the light, but the darkness of the materialistic side of things, then you would understand that it has only gotten exponentially worse in terms of the materialistic Ahrimanic influence in the world that we're seeing. And as the world breaks down around us, there are infinitely more opportunities for error. The greatest souls of our time could be sent through an artificial intelligence education system as an elementary school kid, because that's happening now. There are schools that are moving exclusively to AI, giving the kids access to AI in elementary school, teaching them how to read before the age of 10, right? These are all things that weaken the will, weaken the willpower and the spirit of the human being. And Steiner was very clear that even the highest initiates, if they are not educated properly as children, they potentially cannot fully incarnate in a way where they are making an impact, becoming clairvoyant, all the things that an initiate has the capability to do. We all have this capability, especially as anthroposophists. If you understand what I'm saying and you understand Rudolf Steiner, you understand that you have probably been an initiate in the past. Souls are striving ever more for the spirit, and they find nothing in this world. And some of these souls are the greatest of all of us. They are the greatest souls. We know that many of the greatest initiates in the history of the world are incarnated right now on the earth. And that is because of how crucial this time is for the remaining future of our earthly embodiment. And Rudolf Steiner's address at the foundation stone laying at Dornach on September 20th, 1913 made this very clear. He said, and I quote, "Let us try deep, deep down in our souls to sympathize with what human souls feel in the countries of the East, West, North, and South. Souls whom we may recognize as the best ones, who do not go beyond what we can express with the words, an undefined longing and hoping for the spirit." And with these capabilities for error, it's vitally important for us to figure out ways to get more information out regarding spiritual science. It's not just to get the information out blindly without consideration for how that information is presented, to who it is presented, and what aims and goals does it have in the presentation. But it's just getting the information out there at this point, trying to reach as many people as possible, because there is an urgency. Artificial intelligence is, again, exponentially increasing in its capability, which means Ahrimanic beings within the artificial intelligence, right? Ahrimanic intelligence. That's artificial intelligence. Steiner knew about this. He knew it was coming. He talked about it. And the problem is we didn't wake up soon enough. And now we are facing what is the potential for a technology to take away our thinking and to take away our will. Because ultimately, if we allow these things to take our jobs, which is already happening, because I see it in my job, I see it with entry-level opportunities for students and tech opportunities and computer science opportunities and coding opportunities, that artificial intelligence is taking these jobs in many high-tech companies who are not even hiring anymore. Talk about the big seven, the Mag Seven companies. They're not hiring. They don't hire. They fire people. They let people go. Since 2021, they've been letting people go, and they do not hire people back. These are the biggest companies in our stock market. And if you're invested in the stock market, I'm sorry to say, in some ways you are supporting this dark brotherhood movement of artificial intelligence and many other dark things that are behind the scenes of social media and many other technologies that are being developed and supported with government and corporation combining into a a corporatocracy or a kleptocracy or a feudalistic state, whatever you want to call it, fascism, doesn't matter. What matters is that this is the evisceration of the human being. And what we need to realize is that by us even using the technology at all, we are supporting the algorithms, and we're helping to train the AI. And it's difficult because I use AI. I do use it because I use it for searches. I sometimes, a lot of times when you search, you want a specific answer, right? You don't want like 100 things. And so what are you supposed to do? I know I try not to use ChatGPT now because I don't morally think that they're in the right place. I try to use Claude, which is Anthropic. But I also am wary of using it, too much, right? There might be basic things that you have questions about. Like, for example, I was asking, things about the historical progression of electromagnetic frequencies, which is something that I want to talk more about in the future, but I can start to talk about it now. But we have a lot of electromagnetic frequency wave power that is now present in our earthly sphere. And ultimately, these electromagnetic frequencies are the technology that can be used to manipulate us because we are electromagnetic beings ourselves. And so, I can give you an example, um, you know, um, a report that was derived from the testing program of the Microwave Research Department at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research stated microwave energy in the range of 1 to 5 gigahertz, a militarily important range, penetrates all organ systems of the body and thus puts all organ systems at risk. Effects in the central nervous system are considered very important. The report states microwave pulses appear to couple to the central nervous system and produce stimulation similar to electrical stimulation unrelated to heat. The Walter Reed research mentioned identified non-thermal effects, meaning biological impacts occurring without tissue heating. If you look it up now, the CDC and all the regulation industries, the FCC, etc., they say that it only impacts thermal. So it has to be hot. For example, your device has to be hot for it to make an impact. This is not the case. They don't want the truth to get out still. And somehow this is not something that's talked about as much as it should be. But right now, we are experiencing, in terms of 4G, about 2 gigahertz. Okay, so in the range that we just talked about, and 5G is 24 to 100 gigahertz. Okay. Now we can only imagine what 6G will do. And that's coming. That will push us above 100 gigahertz. That will push us into the terahertz range, which is the next octave up. Okay, so the same frequency ranges used in military research are now used in civilian infrastructure. this militarily important range of 1 to 5 gigahertz is now standard in consumer devices. So if you're using a cell phone, you are most likely not going to be able to progress spiritually. Unfortunately, I use a cell phone as well. So what are we supposed to do, right? They're a part of our life. These are inconvenient truths, right? No one wants to know this stuff because we're so infused into the technology now. Um, but what we have to realize is that, yes, these things can control our minds. That's how they control you through the media. There's a certain frequency that's coming through the media that connects to your central nervous system. And because we're swimming around in this environment with high electrical magnetic frequencies, we are actually easier to be manipulated in that way. Okay, this was discovered by Jose Delgado, a Spanish neurophysiologist. Um, he had a physiological basis for behavior and emotions. He found that electrical currents administered through electrodes implanted in brains of animals and humans produce highly specific emotional and behavioral responses. To Delgado, the mind was confined to the physical brain. He rejected free will and proposed that the mind was a functional entity produced by the electrical operations of the brain and should be manipulated by external means. These experiments were done in the 1960s. Our technology has advanced exponentially. Okay. We now have electromagnetic pulsations from our phones every few seconds. The phone is actively transmitting data, text, calls, internet use, switching between cell towers using internal electronics such as audio amplifiers, speaker electromagnetic coils, etc., computer processing of the phone. These pulses are ranging on average within the 1 to 5 gigahertz range, which is exactly the range that was researched in the Walter Reed study I mentioned earlier of the military in 1986. Okay, so the pulsing nature may end up being more harmful than consistent exposure because the body is thrown into a chaotic state. The pulsing nature of the phone is actually its normal operation. It's designed to transmit in bursts rather than being a continuous transmitter. Okay, so when you're talking about Bluetooth headphones, Apple Watches, attached to the body, these are proximal to our blood system, right? Our circulation system, as well as our brains. And so I would say EMF interacts most directly even through those. So I won't go into more detail about that, but I have done my research and I understand the effects of these things. It's not easy to hear these things, but this is just one example of the many examples of the type of technology that we are exposed to now as spiritual beings. And the last thing that I'll emphasize in this video, if I haven't woken you up by now, I hope I have, but there is a positive side to this. And if you stuck around till now, I will give you the positive side. And the positive side is that, first of all, we can mitigate our own exposure to these electromagnetic frequencies. Okay. We can't avoid it entirely. What we can do is learn more about ourselves through spiritual science. Reading a book like Philosophy of Freedom can teach us that man's freedom lies beyond the physical body, beyond the physical brain and nervous system, of which is being attacked by modern day society. We can think and act out of our own spirit and free will, out of moral principles that come directly from our heart that connect to the Christ. And so if we understand that we are not just the physical brain, we are not the physical body, we are not the physical neuronal intelligence that Ray Kurzweil talks about. He talks about the fact that we are going to merge with the AI within 20 years. He thinks this will happen. Actually, 20 years from now is his prediction, I believe. And so he believes that we will be 1,000,000 times smarter because the AI we won't know the difference between the AI thoughts and our own thoughts. and that we will have capabilities. We'll be able to sing like our favorite pop star, and we'll be able to do art like Picasso, and we'll be able to do all of these crazy things. Now, he's a lunatic, but this is the direction that they think that they're taking the culture and society. I do not believe that in all reality that this will work. It may be something that's rolled out, but the people who do it, I believe within 5 years will be dead or will have serious injury. And so, I don't think it's something that's going to necessarily take over the world. I think a lot of people are awake after, especially after the COVID vaccine, um, that they will understand not to do the next thing, which is going to be some kind of implant. It might not be. It might, you know what? We know what they're going to do now because people have figured out that the blue light from the screens is actually really bad for us as well. And so the blue light is just as bad as the EMF I was talking about, if not worse. It could be worse than the EMF. It emits its own frequency of light, and that includes LED lights because they only show one frequency of light, which is blue, rather than the sun, which shows all the colors of the rainbow. Now, um, they may try to have a screenless AI sort of computer experience where we can have it on our shirt and the AI is hearing everything we say, listening, it is understanding, it knows right when we want something. It's like sort of an all-knowing thing where it's listening to, it can play back everything that's happened, so you don't even have to have a memory. Now that will take away the etheric body, right? And we'll be just reduced to a physical body at that point, because the etheric body is where we have our memories, not the physical brain and not the neurons. There are no memories in there, and they cannot prove where memories come from, and that's because it's the etheric body. Now, people like Ray Kurzweil also say, the computer is 100 times smarter than us, and the computer is going to be able to do everything that a human being can do and more. This is completely false because we know that we have the ability to become clairvoyant and see into the spiritual world and communicate with spiritual beings. Even now, not being clairvoyant, you may have clairvoyant capabilities that you have no idea about. There are thoughts and things that are coming through you that are related to the celestial hierarchies, to your guardian angel, to archangels, to Archai. And those inspirations and imaginations and intuitions are something that an AI can never have. And if we connect ourselves with the AI, we ultimately lose the connection to the spiritual world because the AI is looking to replace our imagination, our inspiration, our intuition. So that's ultimately our loss of connection to the spiritual world. And the spiritual world does not want this. And the spiritual world will revolt if this is tried. There will be greater and greater crises as we go forward in time. And the reason is because there will be greater and greater crises because the spiritual world needs us to wake up. And so if you think that things are bad, you can know that the spiritual world is calling out to us. It is yelling out. It is saying, please wake up to the spirit. Please wake up to spiritual science. Please wake up to anthroposophy and understand that Rudolf Steiner was the greatest individual spiritual being of all time throughout the course of all of history. He has contributed more than anyone to philosophy, to spirituality. That individuality is something we need to understand. We have to have reverence and devotion to and understanding to. And if we don't wake up to and understand that this was one of the greatest spiritual revelations in the history of the world and is needed for our time, we don't have much time left, because the Michaelic age is almost halfway through. And we need to fight. We need to fight for the spirit. We need to fight against the Ahrimanic materialism. We can't just take a step away into a Luciferic realm. We can't only work on ourselves. We can't avoid the craziness of the world. We can't have these things live in the subconscious and not bring them out into consciousness. We have to live in full reality and full truth and still do our daily responsibilities and duties and jobs and do them really well and balance all of it through Christ, understanding that Christ is helping you through all of that and helping you balance everything in your daily lives. And if we can have that spiritual vision and understand that everything that's coming towards us and everything going out of us is a spiritual connection, then we can have the Michaelic vision and the Michaelic will that we need to get through our daily lives, to help others, and to love one another ultimately. Thank you.